from FS Securities, a stockbroking firm on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. And every Monday, as usual, I go through what happened globally around the world and try to forecast what we may see this coming weeks. I'll show you how investors and traders can make money on our stock market and globally. I'll show you what is hot and what is not, and what you should hold and what you should fold. So enjoy the presentation, and if you like it, we would really appreciate some feedback. Well, overnight, that's on the weekend, we can see that the Dow on Saturday morning was down 0.8%, 227 points. The S&P 500 was even higher, 1.1% lower. And the Nasdaq, because of all the Microsoft and the Apple and the big micro in IT companies suffering because of what's happening in China, was down 1.8%, which of course had a major effect on the total market. In Europe, the Stoxx 50 index, which comprises most major European markets, was down 0.6%. And in London, the FTSE 100 index was down 0.4%, 33 points lower. In Germany, the DAX was down 0.6%. In Japan, the Nikkei index was down 0.4%. And in China, the Shanghai index was almost steady. On our market on Friday, we were down 24 points or 0.3%. And as a matter of interest, the futures at the moment showing that most likely the market will open 47 points lower this morning when the market opens in less than 1 hour. Gold on Saturday was trading at $1,648. That is actually $28 rise on Friday or Saturday morning. Silver was up 21 cents, 1.1%, and West Texas crude oil was down nearly 1% to $53.38. And soybeans, for those people who worry about soybeans export from America to China, was down 0.2% to 899 US per bushel. The US dollar, looking at the Australian dollar versus the US, we were actually 66.3. However, I heard that this morning it was actually slightly below the 66, around the 65.8, which is the lowest level since 2009. The Australia will also give you 61.1 euro cents and 51.1 British pence and 104 New Zealand. Over the full week and from around the globe, we start with the Dow Jones Industrial Average. This is actually telling you what happened last week in those two columns and what happened over 2 weeks collectively. We like to actually put the 2 weeks together to be able to determine the trend. So the Dow Industrial Average, which makes up the top 30 US stocks, had a weekly fall of 1.4% or 406 points. As a matter of interest, the 1.38% was dissolved by the gain the week before. So putting the 2 weeks together, it was actually still down but slightly lower than the 1.4. And when you look at the Nasdaq, 1.6% last week, but the 2 weeks together we were still positive of 0.6%. So should we worry? Well, not really, exactly when you have confirmation that even though with the drop of 1.6%, we're still positive over 2 weeks. The broader S&P 500 index was also up 0.3% over 2 weeks. And the US dollar stronger and the Australian dollar weaker. Now looking at commodities, I said that gold was up $28 on Saturday, but however over the full week was actually up 59 US dollars per ounce, and when you compare the 2 weeks together, we actually up 4.6% or 72 US dollars per ounce. Silver had also a good 2 weeks together, 4.4% over 2 weeks. And West Texas crude oil, 6.2% rise over 2 weeks, $3.12 over 2 weeks. So 2 weeks of continuous climbing up. Okay, now in terms of our market, at the closing bell over the full week, our market was up just 9 points. As you can see here, 8.8 points. However, when you consider what happened over 2 weeks, the market was actually up 116 points, actually 1.7% up over 2 weeks. Our market closed at 7,139. Over the full 2 weeks, the ASX 200 was up 1.7%, as I mentioned. The ASX 200 index, our market gauge, is made up to a great extent by the financial and the material sectors. The financial and the material sectors. When both sectors are up or down strongly, the market reacts accordingly. Usually there is a drag or push up or down. Last week, the financial sector was actually down, sorry, it was up 0.1%, but it was up much higher over the full 2 weeks, 3.7%. The material sectors was up 0.3% last week. However, the 2 weeks together down 0.5%. It's very important to look at 1 week and then compare it with the 2 weeks combined. On the stocks, as you can see here, we see that going down with the positive side, AMP had 18% rise over 2 weeks, 18%. Most of it came last week, and we had another rise the week before. The banks, ANZ 4.7% higher, CBA 4.7% higher, NAB 5.6% higher, and Westpac 3.2%. Apart from the banks, you've got QBE had 2 good weeks, 6.9% last week and 7.9% over 2 weeks. On the negative side, we see that Bramble, a quarter of Bramble went down. As you can see here, it went down from nearly $12 down to $9.62, $3, 25% rise. Even though the rise last week, overall we still have a major down trend on Bramble. We also have Santos down nearly 4%, and Woodside Petroleum down 2% over 2 weeks. And if you want a copy of those slides, all you have to do is call us. We also like to look at volume. You can see the volume on Friday was much higher than the last 15 days. And when you look at what happened, 27% of all the stocks advanced. However, nearly 30% of all the stocks declined. However, when you look at over the last several days, we had more blue than red. So I mean, the market at the moment is jittery between up and down. And you look at week on week, you find that last week the advances and declines were almost at par, almost the same. However, we've had up and down. We had 2 bad weeks about 4 weeks ago, another bad week 3 weeks ago, slight increase, and steady last week. At FS Securities, we have over the last 15 years designed a mechanical system based on technical analysis that include 8 indicators, that's technical indicators, across 2 time frames on the charts. Through them, we are able to create strategies for the investor as well as for different type of traders: conservative trader, aggressive trader, and very aggressive trader. These are the weekly, so that's what happened on Saturday morning. These were actually based on last week indicators, the week before and the week before. And then when you compare what happened on the daily, you can see, for instance, that we 2 Saturdays ago we said that we were bullish on the Dow, and on Monday and Tuesday we ended up being bullish on the Dow. However, we ended up the week with taking a bit of the bullishness away, neutral for the conservative trader, and on Saturday morning we ended up neutral across all type of investors and traders. Again, you can look at gold, very bullish. We ended up bullish 2 Saturdays ago. Silver was actually, on the other hand, was neutral. So we ended up with very strong bullish at the start of the week. We continue to be bullish for gold. So if you traded gold based on this forecast, you would have made some money. And then we ended up going neutral on the silver in the middle of the week, and we ended up staying bullish. Crude oil, we were very bearish for the long-term investor, but neutral for the traders. And then on Monday or Tuesday, we decided, okay, based on the figures that we have in the beginning of the week. So we decided to go very aggressive for the bullish for the very aggressive, and continue to be bearish for the investor, the long-term investor. However, you can see that crude oil turned from bearish to neutral, and we ended up being bullish for the very aggressive trader. Of course, the daily forecast comes earlier than the week, obviously, because these are determined at the end of the week, but these are determined at the end of the day. In terms of the Australian dollar, we are very bearish, as you can see here, even though we were neutral 2 Saturdays ago, which obviously at the end of the week we ended up being bearish, influenced by what happened during the week, which of course we picked it up early in the week with a very bearish signal for the Australian dollar. Looking at the chart for the Dow, you can see for the last 2, 4, 6, 7 days we had 4 red and 2 green and 1 neutral. So obviously last week wasn't a very good week for the Dow, and you can see here we had 2 beautiful green candles, but then last week the overall candle was red. Now what we also like to show you, because we want to see how our forecast is determining how accurate. So what I've done here, so if you looked at for instance ANZ, we said 2 Saturdays ago, before the start of last week, we were bullish for the very aggressive trader, and you can see here what happened at the end of the week. ANZ over last week actually ended up being at 2.4%. You would have made money for the very aggressive trader. For BHP, we were actually bearish before the last week started, and look, BHP ended up being 1.1% of the full week. And we carry on. CBA, we were bullish, however we ended up being down 2.2%, however sorry, $2, but then remember that was an ex-date influence. CBA paid $4 for so it really did very well, down $4 for the dividend, but over the full week down only $2. So again, we show you what happened on the forecast, and we try to confirm whether we were good or bad or otherwise for the weekly. And then again, we do the same thing with the daily. We actually tell you week, day by day, and at the end of each day we show you what happened the previous day performance, and see how good our forecast is. Now of course there are some, out of the 8 indicators, there are 3 or 4 lagging indicators, would take time to actually form a trend or otherwise. So sometimes the indicators, the 5 out of 8 indicators, don't form immediately. And by the way, our system does not tell you where the penthouse and the bottom floor. If you can actually get into the lift on the 3rd and 4th floor, miss the penthouse and come down to the 21st floor and get out on the 21st floor, you leave some crumbs on the table, that's all right. Now again, the same thing with our American market. This is our daily ASX 200. At the end of the week we ended up neutral, so it's not really too bad when you consider that out of so many green candle, there was only one bad red candle at the end of the week. On the daily, again, we show you that before last week started, before Monday started last week, these were actually our recommendation for the sectors. Bullish for the All Ordinary, and as you can see here, the All Ordinary continued to be bullish right through. The energy was bearish, and we ended up bearish as well. So we compared the weekly forecast and what happened day after day during the week. Okay, last but not least, I want to show you that at FS Securities we look at volume, extraordinary volume, to determine why certain stocks have actually had extra volume. I have here the stocks that showed above average volume. This is the weekly. What you see here, the average volume over the week. So it's actually, you compare the volume here, the average was 17 million transaction every week, Well, last week QBE had 33 million transactions. That is actually 185% above the average volume. And look at the price. The price went up by 7%. Volume goes up, the price goes up. It actually pushes you to look into those companies and say why. And then if they are good, we put a paper on those stocks and we recommend them for trading, either on CFDs or on options or on shares. Again, ANZ had a rise in price and a rise in volume. Now at the bottom of this slide we can see the mid cap for those who are more aggressive. For instance, West African Resources, the price went up by nearly 10% and had 442% above its average volume. It's usually traded every week, 9.2 million shares. Well, last week we had 40.6. Now remember those companies, because now we're going to go to the daily volume and see which stock on Friday continues to have extra volume. So here we've got QBE, high volume, high price. Stockland, high volume, high price. ANZ, the same thing. On the bottom side we have West African Resources, Bellevue Gold on the bullish side. Now 7 Media went down by 26% over last week with a volume of 417%. Need to have a look at that. Now look at the daily now. We remember QBE. Well, QBE had big rise in the volume last week over the full week. Well, on Friday continues to go higher, only 0.1% higher, raising only 2 cents on Friday, but the volume continues to be 14% above the volume. Lend Lease show up on Friday. Now on the bottom side we don't see anything here that we've seen already in the weekly. That we start doing this, and then obviously we take those numbers and we put them into our study, our research, and we actually move into writing some papers. Now finally I want to show you what happened with our CFDs. We had a very good week last week. Remember, over the last 5 weeks, the last 3 consecutive weeks we made some money. Now last week you can see all the profit and all the losses. In the beginning of the week we started to do some losses, closing position or whatever, or we got triggered with stop losses. However, at the end of the week we started to make some money. As you can see, we've been trading mainly the Australian 200 cash. We've done some trade on Fisher and Paykel. This is still open, and Domino Pizza is still opened. Now this is what happened last week overall from Friday to Monday. If you want to see what happened the week before, we had excellent week 2 weeks ago. We made nearly $1,000 profit. If you look at all the green and all the red together, we ended up with $1,080 profit we had. So overall, out of the last 5 trading weeks, 3 consecutive weeks with profit. Now finally, our disclaimer: everything I said here today is only for just general advice only. You know that there is a risk in trading, so before you take any action, please consult with us or with your professional advisor. Remember, there is always no guarantee that everything we say will turn gold. And if you have any questions on anything we presented to you today, all you have to do is write to me, George at fssecurities.com.au, George at FS Securities. FS stands for full service, FS Securities. And if you want to call me on my mobile, if you're ringing from overseas, 61 for the country code and 411-259526. You don't need the 0 if you ring from overseas. So 61-411-259526. Finally, have a good trading week and good luck with trading.